It's your girl, Mrs. Tony Two Times, and I'm back with another episode of Hood Tales. In this video, let's take it to Portland, Oregon, to tell the story of an exotic dancer who confronted her childhood friend turned rival at the club. But before we get into this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss any future uploads. Also, this video is sponsored by me, Mrs. Tony Two Times, and my YouTube channel. Make sure you check it out. Look out for the link to it in the comments. Stay tuned until the end to hear the full story. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. When friends and family spoke about Shantina Turner Shamsuddin, they described her as someone with a warm smile and a kind spirit. She was 29 years old, full of energy, outgoing, and loved to be around people. To those who knew her, she wasn't just another face in Portland. She was someone who left an impression, a woman people gravitated toward because of her personality and her presence. But behind her bright spirit was a complicated history, one that tied her to someone from her past, someone who would eventually cross her path again in a way that no one could have imagined. That person was Renita Linnell Lowe. Renita wasn't a stranger. In fact, she and Shantina had known each other since childhood. Over the years, though, their relationship changed. What may have once been a caring friendship turned into catty tension, a rivalry that seemed to grow as they both found themselves working in the same industry, Portland's gentleman club scene. Renita, at just 23 years old, was dancing at a club called Tommy Two's, while Shantina, though not a dancer herself at the time, was known to be a familiar face in those circles. Witnesses later said the two had a history of disagreements, animosity that stretched far beyond just a few encounters. On the night of June 15, 2016, both women ended up at the same place, Skin Gentlemen's Club, located off Northeast 60th Avenue in Portland's Cully neighborhood. It was just before midnight when things took a turn. Surveillance video would later show Shantina sitting at the bar, talking casually with friends, calm and relaxed. Moments later, Renita walked in after finishing her shift at Tommy Two's. Instead of keeping her distance, she chose to approach. According to Renita, earlier that night, Shantina was kicked out of Tommy Two's for getting into a fight with her. For about 5 minutes, the women exchanged words. To outsiders, it may have looked like a simple conversation, but the hostility between the two women were simmering beneath the surface. A bartender would later recall seeing Renita punch Shantina before the club's bouncer tried to step in. But even as the security tried to pull Renita away, she wasn't finished. She reached into her purse, pulled out a knife, and in a matter of seconds, everything changed. Shantina suffered 3 devastating injuries to her neck. Despite immediate efforts inside the club, she could not recover and later succumbed to her injuries. Chaos erupted. Patrons screamed, staff tried to control the scene, and security rushed after Renita as she bolted out of the club. But her escape didn't last long. Just next door at the 7-Eleven convenience store, Renita walked inside in an attempt to hide out. Coincidentally, 2 Portland police officers were already in the store grabbing coffee. They arrested her on the spot without a fight. What followed was a courtroom battle filled with twists. Renita initially tried to claim that she acted in fear, that Shantina had choked her, and that the knife wasn't even hers. But detectives quickly uncovered the truth. She admitted that the knife was her own and that she had opened it inside her purse and that she deliberately used it. The case moved forward and Renita was indicted by a grand jury. At first, Renita pleaded not guilty to charges of hit and unlawful use of a weapon. But as the evidence stacked against her, including video footage and witness testimony, her defense shifted. Eventually, in 2018, Renita pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter and unlawful use of a weapon. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. In court, Renita apologized to Shantina's family, saying she never meant to take things that far. But for Shantina's loved ones, the pain was immeasurable. Her mother described the loss as something she would carry forever. Her father said he couldn't understand why Renita showed so little remorse. May Shantina continue to rest in peace. My deepest belated condolences to her family and loved ones. I send them my well wishes. This story is not just about one tragic night in the Portland club scene. It's about how long-standing grudges, unresolved emotions, and bad decisions can spiral out of control. Two women who once knew each other as children, friends even at one point, crossed paths again in adulthood. But instead of reconciliation, their history ended in tragedy. For Renita, what may have felt like a split-second reaction changed the course of her life. At just 23, she went from being a dancer with a future ahead of her to an inmate facing more than a decade behind bars. And for Shantina, a woman remembered for her kindness and joy, her story ended far too soon. This case reminds us of how dangerous it can be to carry unresolved anger and resentment. Arguments can start with words, but when weapons are involved, lives are permanently altered. Shantina's loved ones continue to keep her memory alive, remembering her smile, her laughter, and her spirit. And as for Renita, she will spend years reflecting on the choices that brought her to that night at Skin Gentlemen's Club. The night where rivalry and anger took everything away. Fam, I'm going to leave the rest up to you. What are your thoughts on this story? Let me know in the comments below. Alright fam, that's it for this episode of Hood Tales. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, consider liking and sharing. Subscribe for more stories like this and for the stories behind the headlines, because behind them all are lives forever changed. This is your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 Times. Until next time.